Bien, voy a presentar a nuestro amigo Justin. En realidad Justin es el profesor Justin Halberda de la Universidad Johns Hopkins, pero ya el solo hecho de que pueda presentarlo en español habla de que hemos logrado construir una relación durante todos estos años que venimos colaborando, por lo cual hoy por hoy lo sentimos uno de la casa, ¿no? Ayer yo me quedé pensando que lo fuimos a buscar al aeropuerto y casi que no le dijimos nada y él se maneja solo y hoy lo único que le pasó fue que llegó 3 minutos tarde, muy preocupado porque llegaba 3 minutos tarde. Lo cual muestra que todavía no es del todo uruguayo, pero va camino, porque él nunca en Estados Unidos hubiera llegado 3 minutos tarde. O sea que yo creo que si viene 3 o 4 veces más, ya vas a saber que acá todo empieza 10 o 15 minutos tarde y la próxima vez seguro que llegás 10 o 15 minutos tarde y sin agitarte. En cualquier caso, algunos de ustedes lo conocen porque Justin ha dado una charla recientemente que vinieron muchos de ustedes. Para nosotros es un gran privilegio poder colaborar con Justin y por supuesto es un gran honor, un gran agradecimiento que haya incluso podido haber venido ahora, habiendo venido hace muy poco. No es fácil el viaje desde allá y menos en la actividad que suele tener Justin en Estados Unidos. Así que para mí es un gran placer, creo que para todos. Muchísimas gracias, Justin, por tu charla.
Muchas gracias, Ale. Y gracias por la invitación. Mi presentación de hoy será en inglés, pero antes de empezar tengo de las palabras en español. Y esas palabras voy a leer. Si no las leo, seguramente resultará en un desastre. Ok. Es un verdadero placer estar con ustedes y con la facultad fantástica reunida aquí para la conferencia. Yo creo que el estudio de educación, cognición y neurociencia es una de las grandes sinergias de nuestra época y que por nuestra presencia aquí, todos nosotros promovemos las conexiones nacientes entre nuestras áreas. Para mí, la parte más emocionante es... no, es... ese, sí. Sí. Eso. Y la parte más emocionante es que esta actividad nos da la oportunidad para conectar con personas y ideas diferentes de lo que hacemos cada día. Mi área de experiencia es en el estudio de las habilidades matemáticas de los niños y en cognición matemática en general. Me alegro mucho compartir un poco de eso con ustedes hoy. Algunas de mis diapositivas están en español y espero que eso nos ayude. Muy bien, gracias. Y ahora comienzo a hablar en inglés y yo no necesito, pero necesitamos esas cosas. Y el canal es el 3, aquí. Yo pienso, ¿yeah? ¿Sí? Okay, let's see. Is it working? Clap. Okay, very good. Thank you for allowing me to speak in English. It would be very, very hard for me to do this science in Spanish. So thank you for your patience with my language difficulties. My talk today will bring up 3 topics. One will be about, and it's the 3 topics of the symposium, the brain and how the brain develops as related to basic number abilities, basic number sense. The second will be a brief note about the impact this has on education. Brief, I say just to set up for you that it does have an impact, because the third part will be how can we improve things. So this also relates to education, but it relates to the whole system, the brain, the cognition, and the education. Right? Okay, so to begin, I will have us all remember what it feels like to do some mathematics. So I will put up a problem. You have to solve for x, or try to solve for x. I want to move this. No? No, okay. Here's the problem, so just start working through it. It does have a solution, but don't worry if you haven't found it. That wasn't the point of this example. Okay, you can now take a break and say, all right, I remember what it feels like to do this problem. This was the point. The point was to remember the feeling. And the feeling involves bringing together many different parts of your mind. Yes? When the problem goes up, you immediately have a feeling of how hard is this problem? Was it 2 plus 2? If it was 2 plus 2, you would feel, oh yeah, I'll know the answer. When this problem comes up, you feel, whoa, there's a little bit harder. You know, it has parentheses, it has a 7, it has a negative. These things make you feel, oh, I don't know if this is going to be a little bit hard. I don't know if it will have a solution. I don't know if it will solve. Then what do? You take executive functions and you say, now I will start to pull the problem apart. I will say, I know that I should probably do this addition first. You know, let me put that together. Then I should probably take this side over, you know. And I know that when I do that movement, that means a subtraction. So you're putting into concert many different rules, many different hierarchical tasks, right, that you understand how to do. And the whole time you're feeling a sense of being sure or being doubtful, right, being not sure. So part of what I'm going to suggest to you today, part of that feeling of being sure, and part of your understanding that, 37 minus 9 is going to be something in the 20s, understanding approximate amounts, comes from this very old part of your brain. If you put your hand over your ears, like you're closing out your sound, then it's right under your knuckles, these knuckles here. This is on both sides. This is a part of the brain called the intraparietal sulcus. So it's a groove in your cortex that goes down into your body. And on either side of that, approximate number is represented. So about how many chairs are up here on stage. This is where it's being represented. And that part of your brain is related to how well you do, what I'm going to show you, is related to how well you do on math problems. It doesn't let you do the whole math problem, right? As we said, mathematics requires bringing together many different parts of the mind. It's not just one part of the mind, it's many parts, yeah? But this is one part. Okay, let's do another problem. This one is a little more fun, okay? I'm going to put up some dots, and now they get hidden. Whoop. They get hidden. Some of them leave, okay? Are there more or less green dots still here, or red dots here? Which one has more, red or green here? Red. I think it's red too, yeah. So notice this simple problem that didn't involve any digits written up on the board was a basic subtraction problem. It was an intuitive subtraction. You went through the same kind of operations. You had an estimate of the initial greens. You had an estimate of, and a memory. You had an estimate of what's leaving. You have the subtraction with the result, and then you have the comparison task. So this is a basic intuitive subtraction. And even babies can do this kind of subtraction problem. So the foundations for our basic understanding of mathematics, that there's sets, that they have a number that goes with them, that we can transform the number and track the result, those basic abilities are present in the infant. Okay? And also this relies on that same piece of cortex, that same piece of brain. Okay? And here's another one. So I'll put up some dots, just flash them, and you have to shout out a guess of how many, and try and do your best to get the right answer, okay? And we'll hear everyone's guess, and we'll say, that one, you'll be able to see, are you closer than the people around you, and you'll feel proud, or you'll feel embarrassed, or, all these feelings that happen in the real classroom, and that some of us want to say, might help motivate students, may not. Let's see, does it motivate us to think more deeply about our science? Let's listen to our data. Okay, so how many dots are here? Ready? How many circles are here? We have things from 12, 7, 9, 10, 8, 9. Okay. So something like we had 7 to 10 and most or 6 to 10. And mostly right around the middle, you see the group, like yesterday, as Mariano was showing us, the group was quite accurate, right? The group was in the middle, but we had the spread of all the individuals. Here we go again. ¿Cuántos puntos? 17, 15. Anything bigger? 20? 22? No, okay. 16. Okay? Again, the group is wiser, but notice that with the bigger number, 16, we have bigger spread. We have things going up to 20, we have right? So 9, we had a tighter spread. 16, we have a bigger spread. Yeah? Again? Only this one, not those. Oh no, see? Okay, we have a perfect representation of 1. Everyone can get 1 every time, okay? This one. 36? 24? Oh, 42? 47? Why? How did you know?
The first guess was 36.
Yeah.
And now that's 4.
Okay. Well, that one was right. Okay. And I think this is last one. Everyone knows 3. We have a perfect representation of 3. In fact, we have perfect for 1, for 2, for 3. Some people are perfect for 4, not everyone. Just some people are perfect for 4. Nobody is perfect for 5, really. 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we have the spread come. Okay? So these estimation ability, rapid estimation. Notice that you didn't spend time counting to get the estimation. So there's not just one way to get at a number. There's a more primitive, basic way than counting. Counting is, of course, important, and we all have to learn to count if we want to build a bigger understanding of mathematics. But we start from an ability like this. This doesn't come later. This comes early. Babies have this ability, too, to estimate in parallel how many. Okay, so if I asked you to count how many dots are on each side, there's another problem where I'll just let you experience what would you do. Okay, so imagine I said, how many dots are on each side? And it's a little bit of a hard problem when it comes up. You say, oh, this will take me a while. And probably you start doing something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, something like that. Or you start grouping in some way, right? You start doing that hierarchical strategy processing that's part of thinking mathematically, right? But if I asked you instead, which side has more dots, and it's the same pictures, it's this one. You don't even have to count. So here you are answering a numerical question, which one has numerically more, which one, but you don't even know how many this one has, right? You haven't counted this yet. So you're answering the how many question without knowing even how many there are on each side, yeah? Again, this is about that approximate system, that approximate number system that's in this part of the parietal cortex. And just one experiment to show you that babies have this too. How do you do this study with a baby? So this could be, say, a 9-month-old baby. You set them in a high chair, you habituate them to something like 16 dots, which means you show them an example of 16 until, and they'll look at it when it comes on, but then they get a little bored and they look away. When they look away, you change it to a new picture of 16, but always a picture of 16, okay? They'll look at this new one for a little while, maybe 5 seconds, then they'll look away, they'll get bored. Then you take it away and you give them a new example of 16, and you do this for maybe 8 different pictures of 16. They keep getting a little more bored, a little more bored, a little more bored. Now when they are bored, okay, they are habituated, they don't want to look at these pictures anymore. Now you change the pictures. You either show them a new picture of 16, they never saw pink before, 16 big pink, and they will look a little bit extra. They'll notice the change a little bit. And you compare that to how long do they look at this. Oh, sorry, this is to them, yeah, pretty boring, okay? Like, yeah, 16 pink, I'm still pretty bored. But compare that to this picture, 8 pink. Well, now you have new pink stuff, and you also have a new number. Do they notice the change in number? If they notice, they should look more. Again, they should say, hey, new number, that's exciting. Yeah? And that's exactly what happens if they can notice the numerical difference. And 9-month-old babies can, and they look longer at this. This says, oh, yeah, I mean, hooray, yes, yep, yippee, So the babies look significantly longer at the new number. And doing many kinds of numerical comparisons, we can see which numerical comparisons do babies rely on, and their performance reveals to us that they are also using, and also you can use brain recording to show you this too, they're also using the same piece of brain that you and I use that's right here along the side, the intraparietal sulcus. Okay, so it's one of our foundations. So we've now experienced it ourselves, we've played these dots games, we see something about a baby. Let's watch a baby actually notice this phenomena, okay? So this is a movie of a baby in an experiment, and the baby is looking at the center screen. That's grabbing the baby's attention. Now on each side, the baby sees dots changing. This side changes in number, see? Small, big, small, big, small. This one changes too, but not in number, right? Just dots moving. And baby gets fixated over on the one that changes, you see? Looking at it, looking at it, looking at it, staring at it. So in this task from Melissa Libertas, the babies just keep watching as long as they want. And this baby very much likes the one that's changing in number. He loves it. Yes. This is a future mathematician. Or a dot creator. Okay, so the babies notice this difference in number, and they can do it not just with vision. Another thing that's important here is that this system is part of all cognition. So babies will do it for beeps. You sit the baby between two speakers. On this side could come 16 beeps, over and over, and this side could be 8 beeps, right? And we see, does the baby notice this change in number and turn their head towards the speaker? And the baby succeeds at just the same numbers in vision, dots, and in beeps and sounds. So our understanding of number is not just a visual phenomena. It's a phenomena that's across all modalities. You can also do it in adults. It's been done with touch, and kids in touch as well. So how many things are touching your arm? And you can estimate that number. Yeah. Okay, so now that is the cognitive and cortical system that we're going to be talking about, and a foundation for educational ability, this intuitive sense of number. That's what we'll talk about for the whole talk. And so now I want to transition to say a few words about brain development, and what does it mean when we say, a 6-month-old baby, and in fact there are studies with neonates in the hospital. They were just born a few hours ago, and you can make simplified experiments for them to do in the hospital, in the crib, and the babies can respond and show you that yes, they notice, say, a change in number, or they notice how to match 2 numbers together, even that early, right away. It's there from the beginning, okay? But the baby's brain is not done developing, right? So at birth, the baby has 100,000, is that the right way to write 100 billion? 100,000 million. It has so many. It has so many neurons, yeah, at birth. But at birth, the baby's brain is only a third or a fourth the size of what it will be as an adult. And that's a lot about connections between neurons growing, right? And new neurons growing. So the brain is changing. In terms of the, hello? No? Oh. Aha, wrong button. In terms of the speed of processing in the brain, the adult brain will, because of the process of myelination, will be 100 times faster in some cases for some of the circuits than the infant brain. So this is how fast can information travel through the brain. It's like the baby's brain is going 1 mile an hour, 1 kilometer an hour in the car, and the adult brain is going 100 kilometers an hour. Yeah? It's a major change. So that's important too. The baby, even though we say the baby has some foundational abilities, development is not finished. Learning is not finished. Growth is not finished. It has so much to do. And so we need to understand what's happening in that growth. All this change is controlled by many genes, but also by input from the environment. So both are important. And so what I'm going to do next in the talk is I'm going to talk about some problems in development and what that might mean for this system that we've been talking about, this cognitive system. So some of you may or may not already know, there's in visual processing, which happens back here at the back of your brain, there's kind of 2 pathways of information flow. One goes along the bottom here, okay, which is called, I was going to leave it in English, but this is the ventral pathway, and this path is where you tend to store information about object types. So recognizing the figures, all the numbers, all the digits, what do they look like? What is their shapes? This is coming this way, knowing their shapes. But when you're trying to say, what should I do with them? Is this 3/4 or is this 4/3? That's knowing where they are spatially with respect to each other, and that's being done by this red part, okay? So actually knowing where things are is in a different part of your brain than knowing what they are, right? And to put them together, like say an understanding of fraction, you're going to need both. You're going to need to be able to understand the shapes and of the digit and also understand their spatial relationship. The intraparietal sulcus that we talked about, imagine a hand covering up the ears. It's right here. right where I was saying your knuckles are, right? So it is part of this where pathway. So this intuitive sense of number is alongside other cognitive abilities that deal with spatial representation. So this is a way in which the number sense has a deep relationship to geometric sense. Okay, so the relationship in Cartesian coordinates between algebra and geometry, right? This is in that spirit that it turns out our intuitive sense for number is right alongside our sense for space. Yeah? Okay, now to some individuals who are facing challenges. There is worldwide an increase in premature birth that results in a viable offspring. So medical science is advancing all over the world. Infant care is advancing. And so many more children are surviving than would have been true in the past. This is a phenomena that affects, right now, highly developed countries more so than less developed countries because of the availability of medical science. But it's spreading. And so a question is, what challenges do these infants face as they grow? So in one collaboration that I did in Sweden, this is a study with nearly 1,000 participants. So those that are born extremely preterm, before 26 weeks, 26, 27 weeks, and full-term pregnancies. And, you know, of course, they're born early, born later at the regular time. Their weight is much lower. Those kinds of things happen, and you see those things at birth. But here's what we're going to look at. We've followed those babies throughout their life. They're now 6.5 years old. So, do they have cognitive deficits when they're 6.5 years old that trace back to whether they were a premature infant or a full-term infant? Okay, so we saw them at age 6.5 and measured their dot performance. So the task is just the same kind of tasks you just did a little while ago. On each flash you have to say, are there more blue or more yellow? So there I think it might have been blue. That's blue for sure. That's yellow. I think it's blue. So sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. And we're tracking, and they're pushing buttons. They're playing like it's a little game, 6.5-year-old playing a game. And we're tracking how precise is their ability to see this difference. And that can be seen over here. So an easy trial, ratio 3. That means like 30 blue dots and 10 yellow. How good are you? And the kids are very good. You know, they're up at 100%. When there's, 25 yellow dots and 10 blue dots, both groups know this is typically developing, and this is the premature babies. Now they're all 6.5 years. They're the same. But when you come back here to things that are a little more challenging, you see the premature babies having difficulty faster than the full-term children. And this curve, this is what we expect. Basically, the better you are at this task, the steeper your curve is. If you were perfect at this task, it would go straight up and then flat at 100, right? And you would always know, the ratio 1 here is they're equal. It's 15 blue and 15 yellow. There's no right answer, right? So that's why we expect this curve. And who's better is, we can see it by whose curve is steepest. So the green curve is better than the red curve. So you're born premature. You've spent 6.5 years of your life being helped by your parents and worked with and everything else we can do. Do we still see a difference in how well you have this basic sense of number? And the answer is yes. Even at 6.5 years of age, we can see that the premature kids have a more difficult time with this sense of number than the full-term kids. Now, premature birth leads to all kinds of differences in brain development. It's not localized just to this area of the parietal sulcus. It includes changes in gray matter, that's the neurons, changes in white matter, that's the connectivity, right? Changes in connectivity throughout the brain. So there's a lot of changes in premature birth. So what if we looked more specifically at a group that has just a deficit in brain formation in parietal cortex? So that comes from Williams syndrome. Williams syndrome is a rare genetic deletion of around 26, 27 genes on chromosome 7. This is a woman with Williams syndrome. They survive well into adulthood, people with Williams syndrome. They can have slightly below normal IQ to fairly below normal IQ, but they show some interesting strengths. So a person with Williams syndrome might have a much larger vocabulary than you and I. They're interested in language. They have a facility for language. This image right here is showing where do they have increased brain gray matter. Yeah? And they have more gray matter than you and I, right in where this red area is, right? 10% increase in cortical thickness compared to normals in language-ish areas, in this kind of temporal parietal region, right? Consistent with their behavior, which is that they're very good with language and they're interested in language. They can be wonderful singers. They can show lots of facility around vocal activity. They also have much less gray matter and white matter in the parietal areas directly related to the abilities we're talking about. So what do they also show in behavior besides their strengths? Well, they have deficits in visual spatial abilities. So let me show you what that looks like. This is a reminder of that dorsal ventral stream that we talked about. And this is the brains of Williams syndrome patients, or individuals, sorry, I shouldn't have said patients. I was speaking about them as if they had a stroke in these areas. They don't have a stroke, they have reduced brain matter, but it's from normal brain development on their part, not because of a stroke. So individuals with Williams syndrome have reduced gray matter and white matter in these areas, which again are right along that parietal sulcus that we've been talking about. And that means that they may have difficulty in the approximate number system. We don't know that, we haven't looked, but they do show deficits with visual spatial abilities. Remember, I was talking about the connection between algebra and geometry. So here's some drawing tests. Okay, so this is what they're shown. They say, draw this picture, okay? And so this is one individual who's 11 years old drawing that picture, and they do pretty well. I mean, they've got the blue on top, they've got them sliced in half. Here's another individual who's 11 with Williams syndrome, and notice they know that there's red and they know that there's blue, right? But they can't get them spatially related to one another. This is related to the fractions, like I was saying. I know there's a 4, I know there's a 3, but I don't know if it's 3/4 or 4/3, right? I can't tell the spatial relationship. They can't figure out the spatial relationship. Here you see it again with this picture, so stripes, red stripe, blue stripe, red stripe, blue stripe. Now this individual starts to have difficulty with that picture. This individual is fairly well lost. You know, yeah, stripy, redness and blueness. I know there's redness and blueness, but now even the lines are kind of vertical. They're not even horizontal here, right? This more spatially complex, this picture is actually quite decent. You can see there's a struggle to put them in relationship to one another, the spatial relationships. It's not all there. And then this one here, again, I know there's yellow and green and red and blue, but I have no idea. And there's sort of this wavy pattern. See this pattern? The waves? and here's these waves, right? So I see the texture. I can see the texture, I can see the colors, but I have no idea what goes with what, right? And so these individuals, these are people who may even be decent readers. So this isn't like a dyslexia. This isn't some specific deficit that invades word form area, visual word form area. It's something about novel spatial structure that's difficult for them. Yeah? And so we asked, would they also struggle on the dots task? And indeed they do. So it's the same task. Here's Barbara Landau, one of my collaborators. She's working with an individual with Williams syndrome in the lab playing the dots game. And there's 3 comparison groups here. Typically developing 9-year-old kids, which are up here. Again, remember, steeper is doing better. So there's the 9-year-olds, the 6-year-olds, and down here with the Williams syndrome in red is 4-year-olds. So these individuals with Williams syndrome are average age 15 years. And they're performing in the dots task as if they were a 4-year-old, right? I didn't stress for you yet, but I'll just mention, again, yes, there's brain development all throughout life. And in fact, the kids get better and better. So 4 years is down here, 6, 9. In fact, kids get better at this dots game all the way until age 30 years in our samples that we've looked at the whole. We've done an analysis of the population from age 10 to age 85 years of age. And all of us get better. We had about 14,000 people play the dots game online. And so we could see how does precision change across our lifespans. It gets better all throughout the school years. It's not like just some foundational ability that you have to care about in first grade. It's rather something that gets better and better every single year of your life, all the way until age 30. And who knows, if you practice what we're looking at now, if you continue practicing, maybe it stays strong even out into years beyond age 30. So, yes, it improves, but here the individuals with Williams syndrome are struggling and looking like a normal achieving 4-year-old. How much time do I have now? What am I at? I have 5? Okay, so then I'm going to skip a few things because I just got interested talking about these things and we've spent a little extra time. So I'll tell you what I'm skipping. I'm skipping data that shows you don't want to know. You don't want to know it anyway. You don't want to see this. It can make you feel scared for our future. I'll tell you it. No, it'd take too long to show. What I'm going to skip is data that shows that if you play action video games where you're shooting people and blowing their skulls up with blood, then you're better at the dots game. But it's not because you're better at video games. You specifically improve your math performance, and here's the thing that's so can't understand. You even get better at formal tests of mathematics after playing the games. Okay, so I'm not showing it. It's real. We have it in 3 experiments now. I don't know what to say about it, except that, those games engage that same spatial reasoning. You're in a 3D environment. You're moving in 3D. You're doing time estimation, space estimation. So they might just be a good space to train these approximate number sense, even though that's not what they're built for, and even though they have many, many problems and concerns, and we don't want to say, okay, here's math class from now on in the 3rd grade and 4th grade. You go home and play the shooting game. And we don't want to say this. So we should not say this. This would not be wise. Okay, but that's the data right now. You should know that exists and say, oh, that's puzzling, that's strange. Okay, what? But yeah, a little more?
Question?
Yeah.
But in terms of the evolution of the number sense, it probably came from hunting.
Hunting?
And picking, collecting fruits and hunting. Right? This and you had to figure out if you want to attack 10 animals or 15 animals.
It could be. I myself don't, I shy away from evolutionary arguments because I find them to be on very non-solid footing, because we can all think about ways in which, things could come and things could be. But I would say it's highly related to lots of other estimation abilities, like magnitude estimation abilities, space and time, and integrating them. And I agree with other authors who say it's in this area that's for integrating sensory information with action, motor planning. So it's riding this space between. And I think that that means stories where you say it was for coordinating estimation and action. Hunting is a good example. Those would probably be good examples to say, yes, why is it here? Yeah, I could agree with that. Okay, so let's go through this. Okay, so this is, I'll just note this quickly. Children who are struggling with a math learning deficit, specific to mathematics, separate from language deficits, they show a deficit in the dots game. And so this is them here. They have up is bad performance. So they're showing much worse performance than even low achieving, typical achieving, and high achieving. And in terms of how relevant this is to all children, not just those with math learning deficits, this is socioeconomic status, right? Is it the same SES? Is the same word? Okay, good. Children who are from a lower SES environment are in green, right? Shallow. They're not doing as well as those from the high SES environment. And so improving the foundational abilities could be important for a huge number of our children, not just children with special deficits or specific brain developmental disorders, right? This might be a difference affecting all the kids from low SES environments. This was now going to be a section that I was going to spend quite a lot of time saying, and right now we're learning about how to intervene and improve the number sense. So we're working with children and mostly on the computer, really. We could talk about other ways to improve, but ways to improve. And that's, I think, where our current science is, and our current work in education is how to engage these rapid systems and improve these systems. How to tie the curriculum to the rapid systems so that we get the benefit of integrating across the intuitive and the more executive function orchestrating part of our understanding of mathematics. Okay, so now I'll jump to the conclusions. Oh, maybe I have to do it this way because I don't know how to do. That's good, right here. Okay, so I had 3 parts. In the first part, we talked about in the part 0 was, let's talk about what this approximate number system is, this ability to rapidly estimate. And then in the first part, I talked about individuals who are showing abnormal or difficulties with cortical development. Premature birth, which is an expanding issue throughout the world. Also, Williams syndrome, who show a specific deficit in the part of the brain, this interparietal sulcus, related to approximate math, and they both show difficulties with the approximate number system. In the second part, I mentioned a bit about individuals who have enhanced dorsal performance, enhanced performance in this pathway up here, like action video game players, and one of the studies there was I taught people to play games and showed that it had an effect, right? So it's not just people who play all the time, it's also, you could take people who don't play at all and teach them and show the benefit. They show this enhancement, so telling us that there is this relationship between the brain and the cognition. And then in the third part, I just mentioned a bit about bridging to education and thinking about, inviting us all to think about how can we put together activities that engage the approximate senses, and I know that we already do this in education. I know I'm not, I'm not coming up with a brand new idea here. We already do this well, but I'm saying some of the newest things that we're learning about the intuitive systems, how do we use that newest information about the intuitive systems to integrate it with what's happening in the classroom and perhaps get a benefit to all learners. And secondly, the little bit of data I showed you on socioeconomic status, that a deficit with these core abilities might be something that's specifically affecting our most at-risk students. Okay, so, whoop, was this right? No, I went backwards. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to take questions. In Spanish is okay too. If you want to ask in Spanish, please ask in Spanish. I will try to understand, but then also I can use the translator if I have to. The translator can put it into English if I need it. So thank you.
Justin.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the thing you said you don't want to talk about. No, because of course evolution is conjecture. We can only conjecture because we could not observe those things happening, and yet it's the only theory that biology has, and some empirical data on DNA, right? I mean, this is what we have. So the thing is this: for the past 2 million years, we lived on hunting and gathering. Right? And for sure, we were not farming, we were not, I mean, this was it. So necessarily, this was the one thing that we had to do to survive. So it's really likely that this was important for number sense. That's the way I see it as a biologist, because otherwise, why would, I mean, they were not mathematicians, they were not counting the stars, they were counting animals, they were hunting and foods they were picking. What is your response to that Taliban biological approach?
Taliban? Here's what I would say about that. I like doing biology. I like that. And I think we can say that, but then we could say even more. So for instance, we know the brain areas responsible for these representations. We've even seen some individual neurons and recorded from them that are supporting these representations. The next things to be doing are gene expression in those areas, and also doing neurodevelopment work to say, okay, what are the genes that are coding for the future function of this area, and what is the history of those genes? Where do they come from in those parts of the brain? What are they being expressed for timing-wise for other sensitivities? So for instance, for sensitivity to space, sensitivity to time, right? Because there is the suggestion that maybe all of these are just part of a single magnitude representation. I think that that's an unworkable idea. It doesn't make any sense. If you take it just as it's stated, it's confused. But it was written in a way that allows many people to continue to believe in it. And it makes it perhaps unfalsifiable, which of course means, what use is that as a theory for us to talk about? With that said, there is something to say about how did each of these sensitivities emerge over biological time. And one possibility, this would be the moonshot, would be that it was a case of serial homology. That actually, just like, look at your hands and your arms, okay? And your fingers. And you can bend that, and then 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 you can bend that. Yep, okay. The genes that code for that end of your finger are the exact same genes that code for this part of your finger. And the same ones that code for this part of your finger, and the same ones that code for this, and the same ones that code for this, and the same ones that code for this. They're the same genes. You don't have a separate set of genes for tip of the finger genes, okay? This is a case where we all began as creatures that had just one tube coming off our body. But then we had a duplication event and a differentiation event time that happened after that, so that we now have, two segments, and then another duplication and differentiation, and another duplication. This is how body structure changed over biological time. It's the major sculptor of body structure. It's a little less sure in humans and mammals than it is in insects, but it's the major sculptor. Now, what about for the cortex? How does the cortex evolve and change over the time? Very difficult question. Very strange question and very strange patterns. We don't understand it well. But with a system like this, where you see so much similarity across different dimensions of sensitivity, space, time, number, etc., and they're in roughly the same brain area, you have the possibility of asking the question over evolutionary time, was there some unified function that they all started from with duplication events and differentiation, such that now we have the sensitivities we have? So I agree with you. It's interesting to think about the near history, which is how was number a little different, enhanced, picked up by, exapted in the case of human evolution and our history as hunter-gatherers. I think that's interesting in the near history. I also think it's very interesting in the long-term history of the biological origins of these functions at all. Yeah, so I think it's something we will be studying in the coming decades. Yeah.
Hello. I know nothing about the ANS, but I work in the visual system, and I wonder, in this ventral, so the dorsal path, what happens instead of you putting the dots all together in a flash, you put it in a sequence? It still performs, implies some combination of both dimensions that are involved in the dorsal pathway.
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, so if we just have, so we've done it this way. There's just one, and others have too, with rats and with pigeons. There's just a light, and the light can flash. Right, like that. Too fast to count. Right? And then you have to decide how many flashes, People can do this, and their performance shows the same signature as the all dots at once performance. This brain area likes things happening in space, it likes things happening in time, and it likes number in all those cases.
It's within space and in time.
Yeah, pop, 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 pop. Yeah. I don't think I ever did that. Maybe, no, we did do that. We did it. But we never published anything on it. I think there's an interesting question about detecting individuals. I don't think that the number estimate relies on individuals. It's more like a texture. So that's maybe why we had some complications when we tried to do that kind of setup. Yeah. But I agree, there's something interesting to do there about the integration of space and time. Yeah.
¿Tienen algún estudio acerca de cómo se deteriora esta función con los años y si tiene alguna relación? Porque siempre nosotros ubicamos un estudio en la patología y en el deterioro con las funciones que se pierden primero y con las que se adquirieron posteriormente. Por ejemplo, un contador que instala un deterioro, muy posiblemente lo primero que muestra como alterado es la función matemática, pero no la apreciación de cantidad.
Yes, okay. I think it's an interesting question about how we lose abilities over time. In my own case, I expect that one of the first things I will lose will be my ability to keep my mouth shut. Because I am 40-something years old, I haven't learned it yet. So if I learn it at 60, then it's going to be gone at 63. It'll be 2 good years. I'll have 2 years where my wife says that was the best 2 years of our life. For the approximate number system, I think the loss is a gradual loss, a loss of sensitivity, more like losing eyesight, where it's a gradual, or hearing, you lose it gradually, rather than it being lost altogether. So it may be that later in life it is lost altogether. I don't know that. I haven't seen that. Only with cases of stroke do you see people who lose this area entirely. In stroke, you can see it happen, that they lose this area, and when they lose this area, many individuals lose their understanding of number as, they might remember multiplication facts, because these are stored as language information, like 5 times 5 is 25. They just remember that sound, but they won't have the intuitive sense of the numbers involved if they lose this area. But for typical aging, I would say it's a gradual decay of sensitivity rather than complete confusion. Yeah.
¿Sí? Bueno, primero que nada, muchísimas gracias por tu charla, por el esfuerzo con el español, me parece que es excelente como esfuerzo. Quería preguntarte si hay interacción en la medida en que los niños adquieren, por ejemplo, el sistema matemático más formal, si en realidad hay mejoras debidas a la interacción, porque me parece que es un elemento interesante pensar cómo los sistemas naturales cambian en la medida en que, digamos, reciben el aporte, por ejemplo, de las estrategias mediacionales vinculadas, por ejemplo, al dominio formal. Y si en el caso, a su vez, por ejemplo, de niños con dificultades, la posibilidad de implementar alguna clase de estrategia compensatoria que venga por otra vía, del estilo de una vía cultural, les permite mejorar, por ejemplo, sus habilidades de estimación.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so one question is, let's say this. All the cultures are interested in improving the outcomes for their children. And they're trying to find, that's why we're here. We are here because we would like to have a better way. We'd like to, all the time we are. The people before us were trying to make a better way of teaching and communicating and helping the children. The people after us will want a better way of teaching and leading the children. And so the parents care too. In the best case scenario, in the best situation, the parents care. So I'm a parent. I care a lot about having my kids have a good outcome. And what happens? I'm still trying to figure it out. I can't figure it out. It's a very complex problem. It's so complex, It's nonlinear. It's high dimensional. And so, I think, honestly, the best, I don't know if everyone would agree with me or not. I'd be interested to hear if you agree. But the best outcome that you can have for a kid is when you have the time, the ability, the space, the time to focus on that kid. And if that kid needs, work with 3 people, other students work together to try and come up with a new solution of how to solve, that's great. Or if the student needs just one-on-one time, or that student, each kid needing something different, just like a parent and each of your children needing something different. But the system, at least in the United States, does not support the teachers to allow them to do that. And so I don't think that the teachers need a new program, from some boss who would make everything, oh yeah, we did the no program, and now we have 50 students for one teacher, and they're all geniuses, or something, and they're all happy. That doesn't happen. But people don't want to hear this answer so much. They don't want to hear, you have to pay teachers more, you have to have more teachers, you have to have better classrooms, better tools. Then you'll have better outcomes. That's right. So to me, I do think, yes, while my work is on basic brain function and my work is on basic cognition, that I'm interested in those questions. But if you ask me what would be my vote for the best possible practical impact, I would say it's about teachers in a classroom with kids where the teacher has enough time to work with the kids. Was that helpful a response or no? It's okay. I missed a little bit.
Thank you. Very nice talk. I have one question. Is concerning the premature babies experiments. It recalls to me kind of odd effect and a kind of novelty response to an odd effect. And so I was wondering if you had performed parallel studies to depict if this was a specific mathematical difficulty, or if it was kind of more generalized attention involved in a kind of top-down processing of perception. Thank you.
Yes. So two responses. There were other tasks. So we looked at other tasks. We looked at an attention task, and we looked at vocabulary, and we looked at a couple of other things. Some of those showed deficits, some of them didn't. And the deficit in the dots game, the numbers game, still survived, even controlling for those other ones. So it doesn't seem to be solely attention. It doesn't seem to be solely IQ or something else. But it is true that these children show deficits in many, many areas. So I would hesitate to say we've controlled for everything. The second response is, inside of the dots task, we actually have two measures. One that is, how much are you paying attention to the task? And we can see that based on how well do you do on the easiest trials. If you're missing the easiest trials, we can see in your function that that's because you're not paying attention. You can't keep with the task and keep doing the task and keep going, And so in that difference, we can still, we see that there's a little bit of that with the premature children having trouble staying on the task. But even still, beyond that, there is this precision deficit. So I think they're both true. I think the premature children have a difficulty staying with the task, and I think they have, above and beyond that, a specific deficit with the dots game. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, we have to move.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Muchas
much,
gracias.
Justin, for your conference. Hola.